And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. My name is Wes Tankersley. I'm your host, and have an awesome interview here today with a friend of mine that I actually got a chance to meet. We'll get to that in a minute. If you can do me a big favor, please like, share, and review. Help get this show out there because I can't grow without your help. If you would like to join the Patreon for as little as $4 a month, you can do that. The link will be in my bio in the, it's patreon.com/Wes Tankersley. Come check it out. You get some bonus coverage. There'll be a little bit of conversation with my guest after we get done with the interview. And then there's 3 or 4 that you can get and pick up after if you join. So a great little candid conversation, just back and forth between the two of us. Also want to remind you that if you would like some coffee, warriorscollectionbrand.com. They got a new code for me, 15% discount, #SWC, which is Success Warrior Crew. Go ahead and use that code to get 15% off of your coffee order. My guest today is a friend of mine that I have had on the show before. When I first met him, he has an interesting story, and I've talked about him a bit. We posted, you saw a lot of stuff and clips when Geeg was here. His name's Geeg Wiles. He has a mascot with him named Ahab, and you'll be able to see that here shortly. But it's really cool to get to hear the story and meet with people on the internet that like you may have never known. But we got an awesome chance for him to cruise over here because Payette Brewing did a beer for Ahab. So we are going to talk a little bit about that, and we are going to welcome Geeg back. Geeg, hey, man, what's happening? Good to see you and your friend Ahab back there.
Yeah.
Hey, so, I wanted to do a little bit of a recap. You've been on the show before. There's a lot of things that I knew, but learned more getting to actually meet with you. And then just kind of talk a little bit about your trip to Boise and the beer and all those things and how that came about, For those new audience members who haven't seen the first show, can you just give just a quick brief explanation about what you do?
Sure. So the elevator version is Captain Ahab behind me is a 43-pound, 3-foot tall lawn gnome who aspires to be a pirate captain. And at this point, it's less of an aspiration and more of a reality, as you saw weeks ago. And he's been a traveling mascot and motivator for my friends and family alike for the last 8 generations to just get out and do what you're passionate about. And like you said, I'm sure we'll get into all the details again. But
yeah, it's one thing to talk about it, like to have a conversation with you. I mean, you live in Massachusetts and I live in Idaho. And the first time I had you on, we got a little bit of the story. And it was interesting to actually be with you and see it transpire because for those who don't know, Geeg packs around Ahab, which is how much do you weigh? 43 pounds?
Yeah, 43.
He's a 43-pound garden gnome. And, his grandfather basically, we're going to call it commandeered because that's what you call it.
Yeah.
Basically stole this garden gnome before heading off to war or heading off on a boat for World War II. So, I have to say, when I met you, because I've talked to you, right? Like meeting someone on the internet and talking to someone on the internet like this is different than in-person conversation. And it's amazing because you kind of know what's going on. You see the pictures if you go and follow you on Instagram and the website and all that stuff. And you see, packing around Ahab. But to actually see it happen is like a little bit different. I'm sitting here thinking, all right, what's this going to be? We show up to Edge Brewing, which is another brewery. We go to have lunch. This is where we first met. And here comes Geeg with Ahab. And he's got this way of packing him around because he fits right. The legs fit right over his shoulder. He's done it for so long. It's like crazy. And then we talk a little bit about it. Like we take him into, shake hands, meet, kind of exchange some stuff and talk a little bit. And then we go into the brewery and we sit Ahab at a chair. Tell the people kind of how that goes, because I'm looking at you and I'm going, the waitress walks up, who's your friend? And then it just kind of goes from there. Tell them a little bit about that.
So Wes meets me. I carry him like an '80s boombox is how I describe it. He's just sort of resting on my shoulder, and I'm sure that explanation is outdated for sure at this point in my life. I've never actually seen people carrying around boomboxes like that either. But yeah, so we sit down, put Ahab in a chair, and the waitress comes up, says, "Who's your friend?" I say, "Captain Ahab," and Wes is like, "Oh boy, I'm gonna hear the story, right? Or see him do the pitch or thing." And I just ended the conversation right there. And she left. And Wes not looked disappointed, but he definitely was like, aren't you gonna tell her and do the whole thing? And I just explained to him that we don't ever adamantly pitch it to anybody. We wait for them. And that she, like many others in the brewery, will sort of come around as curiosity gets the better of them. And sure enough, she came back, asked another question, and then it ended up, she took a picture with Ahab in the end. But it is, again, about giving people that chance to let curiosity get the better of them, let their guard down. And that's when the real conversations happen. And it doesn't happen every time, but it definitely happens at the most natural way it can when we let people approach us, when they, like I said, let curiosity get the better of them, and everybody just approaches the conversation they don't know they're about to have with genuine, just as another person. There's no politics or anything behind it. It's just two people or a small group of people talking about passions and aspirations and whatever else comes up,
And
as you've seen so many times.
it's super fascinating to see it happen too. Like when you said that was going to happen, then it happened. And like from then on, I was kind of like, all right, so this is the way it's going to be. Like we finished up, we ate, and then I can't remember what we did after. We went out to Matt's house, Matt Todd, who his episode should be coming out soon, that you interviewed on his podcast. And then we were able to talk about the beer and get we had the cans before everyone else did. And then the next day, we went on a hike, and it was funny. We were having these conversations the whole time, talking about it. And it's interesting to listen to you talk about Ahab, because it's always we, right? Like you've gotten to this point where there's this conversation that you have, and he is part of you, or he is another person, even though he's, he obviously can't talk, but he talks because he gets people talking. And we were hiking up, we get out of the truck and we start hiking up the trail up Table Rock. And we see a guy at the bottom, and he asks us a question about the trailhead, which I'm terrible because I have no clue. It's like, how long is it going to take us to get up there? I don't know. I've been up here before, but meh. So Geeg has got Ahab on a backpack. He's got this special, it's not special. I mean, he's made it work so Ahab can go up and down the hill. And as we're doing this, we're talking about it. And, it's interesting because we all have our phone. We're all taking pictures. We're all kind of like charting this path of where we're going and documenting the hike. And so that guy says something to us, and then we get to the top and we're just kind of hanging out with Ahab. And that happened again. Then this guy that talked to us at the bottom didn't say anything down there, but he brought it up there. And it was just crazy to see that unwind, because every single time someone would walk by and snicker, we'd talk about it, and you go, it's about getting people to talk, right? Whether they're laughing at you or questioning what it is, it gets a conversation started, right?
Yeah, and that's I consider it laughing at our expense. And that's where the best things come from, when the only person that essentially could be offended by anything you're doing is us. So it's always going to be a win, and we're never offended when people stop us in the middle of anything. And just like you brought up that guy, so we fast forward now, right? It's been 3 weeks since I was there already. And you saw how adamant he was about having the conversation up top, and he was a traveler and all this stuff. And he said, "Oh, I'm going to reach out. We have more to talk about." And I haven't heard from him.
Yeah.
So it's one of those things where even if people have the best intentions, there's just little excuses that get in the way, or, time goes on. But on the way down, we met the other lady, Kate, I believe her name was. And she said she noticed us at the brewery the day before, had no idea that she was there, that, kind of stuff. And she goes on to make a lengthy post about who she just met and all the details. She remembered every single detail of what we talked about, and put it all into a post, and about how she's new to the area, and adamantly trying to do all these things. And you just don't know which interactions are going to stick, right?
Yeah.
And even with podcasts, we've been on many at this point, but obviously with the beer and how you helped us connect and everything, you can see that when you is at least with all the Ahab projects and adventures we've done, there's a lot of people that become part of the crew because they hear the story the first time, they get maybe 10% of it. But as you saw, as you were just hanging out, you heard the story again and again, but it wasn't like, oh, this is the same story, the same pitch, the same everything. You're like, wait a second, I didn't know that detail last time. And you, like you told me, you just kept picking up on little things. And then all of a sudden you saw the rubric of why we can, I don't know, predict the organized chaos that happens around it. And, we're 21 years in now, and it's just one of those things where we can't guess which people are going to come up to us or what's going to happen afterwards and things, but we understand what is going on in the setting we're in and how people are going to interact at this point. It's been a social experiment for me for 2 decades, and I saw how he was used for a lot of time before that as a different social experiment with my grandfather and his war buddies, for lack of a better term, my great uncles. So it's really, like I said, just been a social experiment in a way where the variables change all the time, but I've noticed a lot of consistency in a few things, and that's how we make this work, on top of doing all these feats that are ridiculous on extreme levels or fun levels.
Well, and I think the really cool meaning behind Ahab, I feel like, is the fact that he's a connector. Like he was the thing that brought the original people together, right? There's 4 of them. Is that how, right?
Yeah. So, and that's, I'll give you a little more than the elevator pitch, especially for anybody new listening. But yeah, so it was a prank, like you said. They commandeered him. It was one of those instances where they were all sitting around the pub night before they were leaving, and you could tell nobody was excited for the next day, getting on a ship, going, just being in the middle of the ocean for X amount of time, and who knows what would happen. So to cut the tension in the room, the officers told them about this ongoing prank that's been happening over the years and in different iterations, where you'd commandeer something, make a scrapbook, and when your tour was over, you'd bring the said lawn gnome or whatever it was and the scrapbook back to the lawn, knock on the door, hide in the bushes, leaving both the items. And the once very sad parents would be very happy because they'd open the book and see that something that they've always had but sort of neglected now had a story and a conversation starter, or say like a coffee table scrapbook that they would have in their house. And that would become a more engaging piece of their lives. And everybody has things in their house as decorations that remind them of an experience, or they have souvenirs and things. But every year you just find yourself being like, oh, when did I dust that last? Instead of, when have I don't know, even moved the position of it in the room, or put it in a different room, or taken it on a adventure or vacation. And so, yeah, they got back to the port, super excited to give it back. And they realized, between the obvious inebriation that happened that night and being in a town they'd never been in before, and at night, and 2 years later, you don't remember every single detail of a place, and especially of this kind of thing. So they, instead of just ending the prank there, they were so disappointed in not finishing it that they decided to keep it going. And this was their centerpiece. It was the excuse that they made. It wasn't, oh, we have to get together as friends and make sure our friendship keeps going. It was, we have to keep doing things with Ahab. And they made it a precedent to once a year all get back together, have a reunion, play a card game, and the winner would pick the next destination that they went on. And these destinations weren't, extreme things like Kilimanjaro or whitewater rafting or even comic conventions like we'll do. It was just ensuring they all made time and a space and a place and a destination to keep that promise that they made themselves and to Ahab and the prank alive, essentially.
And so you kind of take it to another level, right? Because it sounds like to me, and I never asked you this, but I'm going to ask you now because they didn't take him, like they took him on the trip, right? But they didn't take him around town like you do. They didn't take him everywhere, right?
No, so I mean, they all got together. This place I talked about, they all pitched in back in the day when you could, buy a farmhouse with essentially 300 acres around it for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And they left him there a lot of the times, or sometimes he would be, go home with somebody else and essentially just be a lawn gnome again.
Yeah.
But it was that reminder every year to get him off the lawn, to get him out of that fence imprisoned yard that they would put him in now, and just to make sure he kept going. But yeah, a lot of the times it wasn't, even a few people around town or things might have known that they had this tradition, but it wasn't this every day, every minute of their lives trying to make sure their code of conduct was being, upheld. It was just more of a once a year thing.
Mm-hmm.
But growing up seeing this stuff brainwashes you in a way. It gives you characteristics that, they developed over years, but I grew up with this code of conduct in a way. So to me, it was seeing how passionate they were about being with their friends and connecting and doing these things, which made me, and even being a pirate, like every chance I got, as you've seen in a lot of pictures, I would dress as a kid for Halloween as a pirate, or any excuse, any themed thing. So it was definitely interesting to see. But yeah, now he's around me daily. Like if I go to any other room in the house, I don't bring him with me.
Right.
He's out in the workshop and things like that. But if I'm leaving and it's a nice day, I strap him in the back of the truck and take the long way to get places, and people see and point and wave and laugh and beep and everything.
Yeah. Well, it's crazy because I think that, we started talking about this beer thing and how, it was one of those things where it could bring people together just like you're doing with Ahab. Because I think the conversation is to get a conversation, is to get people connecting, is to get people talking, to kind of put their devices down and just have a regular conversation. And as we mentioned before about, like, who cares if they're making fun of the two of you? Like, they're talking about you. Mm-hmm. So it is creating that social interaction that you may not have had you not seen that. Like, I mean, how many people as we're walking up Table Rock have got their head down and their headphones in and they're just like disengaged, Mm-hmm. And that was kind of the thing that was interesting as we're walking by, the Kate, I think you said her name was. I don't remember names. I'm not very good with names. I have to say it
I'm hoping
times.
It was Kate. I'm pretty sure it is.
Yeah, well, if she's listening, sorry if we forgot your name, but we still remember you. But yeah, I mean, it was just like, here you go. And she saw you at the brewery, which I didn't think much about it being, the beer thing being more until you kind of talked about it being a conversation starter, because we're going down to Payette Brewing, which I had honestly never been there before. I drink their beer, right? Like, I think they have really good beer, but I had never like actually sat down there and just saw the type of place it was. Like, I mean, it's a great venue. It was like the perfect catch for Ahab's beer, because it's about people interacting. You go down there and you look, and they have this outdoor, they call it the beer garden. It's on turf. It has covers, and it has food vendors. Like, they don't have their own restaurants, but we met some awesome food vendors, great people, which we'll talk about Todd in a minute. But it was just really cool because now we're sitting down. We've got Ahab. He's in the bar sometimes. He's sitting by us sometimes. People are walking up. What is this? Like, are you checking this? And then the can itself has a picture of Ahab on it, and it's talking about where he's at. And it can be a mini mascot. Like, people can take this beer, go out on a trip, go out on an adventure, and take pictures with their Ahab as well.
Yeah, just like you said, it's a couple things. It's not only just phones anymore that distract people. I mean, that's the majority of our time, and even me. But it's just the bandwidth you have, burning the candle at every end, the side, and just basically throwing it in a fire. It's not even a candle anymore, right? It's everybody has so much on their plate that they're not even distracted. They're fully unengaged at this point. And there's so many of us that are, where it's just like, wait a second, 5 days just went by and I didn't have a, a thought to myself, right? Just because you're just always filling the schedule, always have something going on. And when it comes to icebreakers, like obviously beer is a great one, but Ahab is just a bright yellow beacon in a way to make you look up or make you be like, wait a second, what's going on? That is not normal, no matter what the circumstance is. And a lot more places, like a brewery, he can almost blend in a way because there's so much else going on. But when you're on top of Table Rock and there's a 40-pound statue up there, you're like, wait a second, how did that's out of place, no matter what the context in many of these adventures that we take. But yeah, it's just about people finding that icebreaker about somebody, or you having one to have people start that conversation. Because we all know, like, you think about grade school and you don't realize how many awkward conversations or just bad conversations you had as a kid, but you were always just interacting with people, and you can remember like when you met people and things. And adults don't realize you're going to have those awkward conversations no matter who you're starting with. But if you get by that first 5 minutes, you find that pace, that rhythm of a conversation, and all of a sudden 2-3 hours can go by, right? So it's just having these habits and these practices and polishing them that I get to practice because of Ahab all the time and get better and better at. That I think it should be part of everybody's daily routine to even just find somebody, try to have a conversation because you like their hat or their shirt or the color of their hair or anything. It's easy to, like, when people are walking their dog,
right?
You can bring up how cute their dog is and just start that thing about the weather. Who cares? Just talk to people.
Yeah, and I think it's I'm trying to remember if it was before you were here or after you were here, but I was thinking about it as I walked into the auto parts store the other day. It was kind of like I walked in there, no one at the counter. I kind of look in the back, because I'm pretty observant, and I look and I can see a guy sitting back at like the back counter, like where they do returns or whatever they're doing. No greeting, no nothing. I need a gas can. I go to the back, I find the gas can. I come up to the front and I'm standing up there, still no one comes out. The guy's standing back there, he's on his phone. He's just like, I'm not going to come help you. I mean, that was basically what I got. And I'm looking around and I see it. There it is. Self-checkout. Now we don't have to have a conversation at all. I check myself out, I leave. And it's just like, this is kind of where it's at. It's like, walking down the street, you say hello to someone, good morning, good afternoon, whatever, how are you? Doesn't happen anymore. Like, most people they've got their headphones in, they're just disengaged from the world. So it's a great way to re-engage. I wanted to talk a little bit about Foxy Frank's because I think that was an awesome interaction as well. Like, I didn't know Todd from anyone, but you had met him. Was it the day before or the morning of the beer release, which we'll talk about in a minute?
Yeah, so he was just someone that, I mean, they're I guess a food truck, but it's sort of a mobile station that they have. Yep. But they're down at Payette a lot, and they saw the release and reached out because Todd's a veteran, a Navy veteran, as you saw, and he wore the hat and everything.
I didn't know this, and I mean, now I feel like I wasn't very. They call it a Dixie cup, like I didn't.
Right? Yeah, those old white hats, right? Yeah. And so he, before we even met him, he made like basically an AI post of a pirate saying that he was going to be down there, and it was just a unique way to tell everybody where he was going to be, but about Ahab being there too. And yeah, it was one of those things where he knew we were coming. Not that us sitting at one of the outdoor tables out there, we would have obviously had a natural conversation with him anyways, even if he didn't know we were coming. But it's just the way that he reached out before he used Ahab as an icebreaker, before he even saw Ahab in a way, right? And yeah, and you saw how he treated us like family, essentially. Everybody, anybody that was talking to us, we were arguing over who was going to go get the other one beer, right?
Yep.
Because we both had like the bottomless tab. I temporarily had it, but he does all the time,
Yeah.
being one of the vendors there. And yeah, it was just such a fun conversation with him and his partner. And like, he had a couple different, I can't remember if they were relatives or just friends of the family that were working there with him as
Right.
well, that were changing in and out. But yeah, it's the same thing. His icebreaker, right, is having the food and just the ambiance of what they do, and which you saw how many people they were like hugging and having conversation,
Right.
and they knew people for years and things, and it was all around this concept, and adamantly having that schedule and sticking to it, right?
Right.
And that's the most you can ask for out of any business. But I don't even think they care about the business as much as they put time into those interactions that they have with each person that comes up for food or just conversation. So their icebreaker is much larger than Ahab, and and mobile, but they're not going to be on top of Table Rock, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where they've found their icebreaker, they found their niche, and they are passionately happy about what they're doing, even though you saw how busy it got and the lines
Oh
they
yeah.
had and everything. And I'm sure there's a lot of hard work that goes into it, but the outcome, the payout isn't monetary, right? It's the experience, it's those conversations, it's just being engaged with people. Because whether it is phones or work or whatever it is, it's just using your time to do, to just progress something.
Right.
And some weeks you only get 5 minutes of stuff done, but you can't say, oh well, I missed last week, whether it's going to the gym or a podcast episode or whatever
Right.
it may be. It's the next week. You don't even have to double down to play catch up. It's just do what you can and always hold yourself accountable,
Right.
or create a group of people like my grandfather did, and on accident completely. They weren't the sharpest tools in the shed in terms of all of the, like, if they watch this podcast, they'd probably be giving me a hard time. Like,
Right.
what I've created is much different than what they created, but it was the building blocks, right? And
Right.
I've taken it to another level, and not that it has to be whoever is the next caretaker in terms of, friends and family and the generations to come. It's not about doing more than the last group did. It's just about continually doing this and creating a legacy over time, because time's the only thing that does that. You can't cheat to get ahead with this stuff. You have to put in the time, and time has to go by. And that's the thing that most people don't see anymore. They just want to be at the end.
Right.
Whether you're playing a video game or your career or whatever it is, it's always like, okay, how do I do this faster, instead of just, it's going to take this much time, and these are the things that I want to do with my life, with my schedule, and over time. Because everybody knows you can do 10 hobbies, but you're going to be a C minus at best at all 10, right?
Yep.
Instead of just picking three, and until you master them, not adding more to your plate.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's a great way to do it, because I think that a lot of people don't. And I'm going to do a couple episodes about like timelines and how people see that, and how your path intersects with that person in moment in time when you meet them. Like, I met you over a year ago and we had a conversation, and that is the first time, and that's what you know of me, and that's what I know of you. Now, you don't know unless you have a conversation with me about who I was 10 years ago, who I was 20 years ago. You don't know those things unless you have that conversation, but that doesn't mean that you were there and you experienced them with me. So you realize people see what's going on with Ahab right now, but they don't know all the hard work you did to get there. And I think one of the things we talked about a little bit was like the social media aspect of like how you're doing that, and how you like it, but it's kind of a love-hate relationship. You're doing a lot of things with Ahab, because I mean, you're a silversmith, so you can get the treasure. I have a couple pieces of treasure. You got the beer going. You were a TEDx speaker. You actually kind of had your own series, right? Or you organized it where you live for other people to come as well. So, I mean, there's so many things that you've done to get to the point where you're at, along with this brewery thing. So let's talk a little bit about that. How did you get connected with Payette? And I'll let you tell a story, because it was kind of it was a cool thing that you decided you were going to do, and then you kind of reached out to my friend Jay and I, and we talked about it. But tell us how that happened.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's like we were talking about the building blocks. It's all at this point, we have a following that's, you look at our numbers and it's not crazy. It's not hundreds of thousands or anything. It's hundreds or thousands on social media, right? It's really not that large, but it's a core. We're not looking for numbers. We're looking for the people that are going to stick around, that are going to join the crew and be part of, be on the ship essentially. And so for bucket list now, like anybody we've ever met, we always, we get into conversations about what you want to do or what you're passionate about and things. And if it's anything that is, like a summit or whatever goal, we add it to Ahab's list. And, wanting to be a pirate like he does, always aspiring to be that captain, a grog is obviously another feather in his cap to make it more official, right?
Yep.
And so with a following that's taken me 20 years to build, and people have come and gone from the crew, different, jobs, families, moving, whatever it is. But it's always grown to the point now where we say, hey, this is the bucket list item we're going after. Does anybody have any experience or information or anything, recommendations to help us get to the next step? Because just like you said, even 10 years ago, I don't know the experiences that were the breadcrumbs that led you to starting a podcast, right? Or whatever that is. But and you bring up a lot of highlights, that the bigger feathers in our cap. But it was at the beginning, it was just throw them in a car. We went to, like Key West to get the southernmost point of the United States, like the buoy that they have, right? And it was just destinations and oddities in the world, like the world's largest ball of twine, and going on road trips, national parks. And over time, we've recorded things over the, just horrible recordings, somebody following me with a camera once in a while. And I watch what I used to say or wear or anything at that point, and I think to myself, like, who's going to talk to this person? Like what a dummy I was. But I think if we all look back, we're all in that same mindset. But yeah, for the brewery, it was a call to arms. It was asking the crew, what brewery would be a good match for our mission. And Payette was an awesome one that you recommended, with a few others that were just I feel like I'm going to butcher their slogan, but the synopsis of it is accomplishments, or the beer tastes better with an accomplishment, or an accomplishment, feels better with a beer in hand, essentially, to essentially have that cheers, like we did it. Right. Which is really how this whole thing started, was over a drink and having the courage because of those things. Like, they had a couple drinks, got braver than they should have, but sometimes you need to overstep. You need to make a promise that is out of your wheelhouse or range, that you have to aspire to, right?
Yep.
Saying like, oh, I'm going to go do that because it's the same hike I do every time, so I know I can do it. It might help you grow a little bit, or you're going to see something different or meet somebody else, but you have to always look 10 steps ahead. And even if you only get 3 there the first time, there's bigger gains.
Right.
So yeah, and with the brewery, you saw all it was. You tagged them, right? And I reached out and said that one of our crew members has recommended you, and we'd love to have this conversation, and this is what we're about. And they just happened to be in a very open and like-minded mindset about working with people. And our situation with them isn't, I don't want anybody to think this was super unique in the sense that they've never worked with anybody before. You've seen, like, now they have dozens of events every month, and they'll do limited releases with any good cause or story or anything, really. It seems, the more I've looked into them now. But you also see, it's been, like you said, it's been a little over a year, probably a year and a half, 2 months, something like that, since we've met. And that first time I was on the show, did you think we were going to meet in person? Right. And those are the things that I hold myself and Ahab accountable to, because before, everybody that knew about him, we'd met in person, they'd heard the story, and they've stayed connected. And as Ahab grew through social media, and other bigger feats and things, it's all of a sudden like, oh shit, we know, or more people know of us than we've met, and we had to even change our rubric around to realize that there's people out there we need to meet now. Like, we're connected. You've put in the effort and help us spread the word, and we ended up out there. And we always try to hold ourselves accountable to try to meet every single person that puts in the time to this.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the whole like love hate thing with social media, because I'm over all of it at this point.
Right.
I mean, podcasts are great because it's conversations. I know we're not in person, but
Right.
it's just, we all know it's a big advertising and monetarily whatever scheme, right? At this point, it's not for the social side of things. It's for the dopamine fix to get everybody going. So
It's
it's
kind of a necessary evil in this day
right.
and time as well, because like trying to get yourself out there, it's really the only way to do it. I mean,
Yeah.
I talk like in my day job about like advertising and things like that. People don't read emails anymore. People don't respond to text messages half the time. People don't, like, if you mail them something, they just throw it away. I mean, I think about my own, like how I go get the mail and I start looking through it, and there's like flyers and offers and things like that these people are sending out, rip them up, throw in the garbage, rip it up, throw in the garbage. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just kind of the way it is. And so it's a necessary evil, because you can't get, someone needs to see your face in order to know who you are, but it's not the same as what it was before. It's like they know who you are, but they don't really interact with you. They know that glimpse of your life of what you see, what's going on right now.
Right. Well, and I think the social media, I mean, especially for us, like we don't adamantly post anymore or try to keep conversations going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we have different theme things and things, but we only post when we're actually doing stuff.
Yeah.
And it's just a decision that we decided to make, and it's definitely hindered activity in terms of engagement and things. But at the same side of the other side of the coin, I literally put my phone on the desk in the workshop or whatever, and I go do things, and I come back a couple hours later and I'll check it, but I don't check it every time it beeps anymore. And it's given me more energy to work on the things that we're trying to do next.
Yep.
And like, I know it's crippling us in some senses for a business, for lack of a better term, for the organization at this point. But in terms of mental, physical, every kind of health, I know it's more of a benefit to just put it out there. I know everybody's going to see it, because everybody's news feed is already, every time you refresh it, there's not new stuff there anymore.
Yeah.
It's new, but it's not your followers or the people you want to see. It's a TV show that you just keep looking at clips for, right? So I know when we post, even if it's a month later, it will be the first thing somebody sees, because it's the newest thing if they're one of our followers.
Yeah, and I think you had a really good valid point about the followers as well. It's like you don't have, like, I was talking to my friend Jay yesterday, and he was like showing Will Smith. He's got like 63 million followers. I'm like, holy shit, 63 million followers. Okay. So I have, I think, 3,500. Okay. And I probably, out of that 3,500, have 10, 15 people who interact with me. And I feel like the amount of people that you have, which is a little bit less, but those are real people that really interact with you, that really engage in what you have going on. So Jay said it to me yesterday. It was funny. We were talking about a lot, like we do our Instagram. We do One Drink Wednesday every Wednesday. And he's like, maybe we're not doing that bad. Some guy who had 1 million followers only had like 7 or 8 people in the audience, and we have 13,000 between the two of us, and we've got 7 or 8 people in there. So the percentage is a lot higher than what you think. So it's crazy, but that's what you're searching for. You're searching for those people who are really actively engaged and want to be there. And your base, I feel like, is that way. Those are real people who really interact with you and really genuinely care about you, not just followed you because, you said something one time or they saw you 1 million times. It's more meaningful.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how I always hope it's going to be, right? Just always I consider everybody that follows us part of the core. Like they have a picture with Ahab, or that's how I consider people crew in a way. And even if they don't have one yet, they're still adamantly helping
Right.
Ahab do one more thing, right? So, and I hope it stays like that. Even if I don't see the likes or the engagement on social media, I know when I bump into people from time to time or we catch up in things, they're just like, "Oh my God, when's the last time we talked?" And he's like, my friends will say like, "Oh, well, I saw you did this, this, and this." So I
Right.
know they're keeping up with the news, or they check the website where everything is always up to date there.
Yeah.
Where it might you might see we haven't put an album together in a couple months, but that was the last big adventure we did, and we're doing the work in between, but nobody has to see every little intricate piece of that, or even care about that. Like, right, everybody's got other things to do. I'm trying not to take up more time than I should with anybody in terms of what we do. It's not always like, hey, keep looking at us. It's
Yeah.
just, hey, make sure at some point you have a reminder, whether it's a piece of silver in your pocket or on a shelf, a t-shirt, a mini Ahab, whatever piece of your picture with them that you put somewhere. When you look at it, you're like, wait a second, I should check in on Ahab and see what he's been up to. I'm sure he's done something ridiculous since the last time we looked into it, and just
Yep.
check in with us. That's all. And we love talking to people. Like, obviously we love talking about all the things that he's doing and all of that. But I check in with everybody about their goals, and what they're aspiring to do, because that's what it should be. It's
Right.
if we can do this together, if I can do this with a 43-pound handicap, whether it's summit a mountain or go to a museum or whatever it is with him, then what's stopping you from finding 5 minutes a day, which turns into 10 minutes a day, which turns into 20 minutes. And then all of a sudden it's just like working out or anything else. The more you use that muscle, the easier it gets. And the first couple weeks is the hardest. It always is, no matter what it is. Right. So it's just making that, doesn't even have to be a routine that's the same time every day or whatever it is. It's just knowing that you have to put in X amount of minutes over the course of a period of time before you're going to get there, no matter what the schedule of that is.
Yep. And it's amazing to hear you. Sometimes you describe him as a burden, but he's your burden, and that weight on your shoulders that reminds you that anything is possible. And I think that most people just need to see that. That think about your life carrying around 40 more pounds. Like, what is that like? How does that deter or make a barrier for you? And just
Right.
getting through that.
And some people do have physical burdens, whether it's a weight or just a limitation.
Yeah.
A lot of people have mental burdens. You get a text message today, and that could be a burden on your month, right? And
Right.
it's just it's a sentence, and it's just the way your mind, reacts to it and everything. But our one of our taglines is how heavy is your excuse,
Right.
right? Because ours is 43 pounds, and sometimes it's the weather that's your excuse, like, oh, I'm not going to go for a run today,
Right.
or we can't do that activity because of whatever it is. Or sometimes it's a monetary thing that's a burden, sometimes it's a time thing. It's burdens are, and I say he is a burden. He's 43 pounds. Like, you saw
Right.
me hiking. Was I laughing and cheerful the entire time, or was I
I
saying
think I
words
heard
that
I
I won't
forgot
say on
how.
here?
I think I heard probably 4 or 5 times. I forgot how heavy he is. I haven't done this
Well,
in a while. It's
yeah,
this. I remember now that this pack, because you took the pack up Kilimanjaro. It's like I remember why the problems with this thing. Like
right.
those types of
And the
things.
backpack was, for Kilimanjaro, but you saw like Table Rock. I'm not going to shoulder him for that. So the backpack is my excuse to not do it. Right. I
Yeah.
could have said, oh, Table Rock is just, it's out of our wheelhouse. But
Right.
instead, no, we have this custom backpack that barely fits me. Right. And
Right.
I'm still modifying every time. And it's just, like I said, making excuses to do things.
Right.
Like, oh, it's raining. Well, at least I won't be overheating when I'm running, or, things like that, where the excuse is the reason you do it.
Yep.
Ahab was the excuse for the generation of caretakers before me to always get back together. And I know for a fact that it pissed off their partners, their wives, that they were like, what do you mean you're going to take off for a couple days with your buddies because of a lawn gnome? Like, we got stuff going on, right? But I'm sure it was a much different conversation, but you know
A
what I
little bit.
mean?
Yeah.
It's just, but they're just like, nope, this is something we do. This is not up for discussion. This is
Non-negotiable.
right. And a lot of people I don't think have those boundaries, whether it's in their relationship or work life balance or whatever it is. They don't have that, like, no, these are things that I have to do, and I can adamantly work around it and make everything work. But a lot of people are just like, well, work only gives me 10 days off a year or whatever the ridiculously small number of vacation, or people don't even, they're scared to use their sick time half the time,
Right.
and things like that. And it's, you have to slowly create those balances. And don't get me wrong, like, we're not a, just crazy wealthy or anything like that, but in terms monetarily, but experience wise, I know for a fact I've lived 5 lives worth of experiences already.
Yep.
And hopefully I'm only halfway done. We'll see. But it's one of those things where you have to realize what's important, because as a kid, I was around much older people than most people, I think, or I was,
Right.
and I always wanted to be, because they had all the stories, they had all the experience, whether it was from being in the same place and working there for 45 years or from travel or both. But all I knew was they all said the same thing about life. And everybody comes to the same conclusions about how there's not enough time, and there's not enough, whether that's not enough time to do the things you want to do or see your friends or whatever it is. You always didn't put enough time into whatever it was, right?
Yep.
So I'm just trying to make sure that I can do that, essentially, and show it through, like, it's hard on the podcast because I am a face on here.
Right.
But when we were hiking around or doing the things, I rarely am in the pictures unless somebody asks
Right.
because they want to see both of us for their picture. But he's my photo double. This isn't about, hey, look what I'm doing. It's what's he's doing.
Right.
And he's in it. He's in the 11,000 pictures that we have of him over the last 20 years, just as me being caretaker with my core piece of the crew and things like that. So it's, like I said, it's just showing people that no matter what the reasoning, the excuses you make, like, this is my excuse to do all of these things that we've done.
Right.
Like, if this is a ridiculously silly excuse, right?
But
It's
it
got a
works.
very amazing story that I've practiced and made better over time, not only with the past of it, but with every experience that we add, every adventure that we add, the story just gets better.
Yep.
And that's why right now you're just like, oh, you did a TEDx thing. That's crazy. How did that come about? It's like, well, with 15 years of experience behind it, it was a real easy pitch. On
Right.
year 2, I would not have given anything worth watching. And even now I look back at every once in a while I take a listen, or I'm looking for a clip, if I'm going to go speak somewhere, I just all right, like, the bullet points of everything and rehearsing and practicing and things. And I think about how much better the story would be if I did that TEDx today instead of 5 years ago now.
Right.
So it's just having these little things that encapsulate that moment in time. At the moment, it's the biggest thing in your life, right? Or it's the thing that made you most nervously excited. But
Right.
looking back, you're like, oh, I can do that, so now I can do it again. And that's all I try to show people. You, like, do it the first time. Like, you should be scared, or, like I say, it's either you're excited or you're nervous, and one of them's 90% of it and the other one's 10%, but you don't know which one it is.
Yep.
And those kind of feelings, like, I don't even like speaking in front of people. Right? Like, I do the same thing. I get up on stage or whatever platform, and you sort of black out for X amount of time. You hope you did what you wanted to do, but you get better at it. But it's just I am just as nervous as everybody else about public speaking.
Yep.
So it's one of those things that he essentially makes me do, right? Because he doesn't have a voice. But how else would he describe this story, this life that he's been on? So
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a great story. If you guys want to check out the original interview, you can go do that. Just go check out. It's in the episodes. Geeg does do some speaking. Ahab forces him to, it sounds like, but he does it. If people want to connect with you for speaking, if they want to check out what Ahab is doing and all those things, where is the best place? You got a website and you got an Instagram.
Yeah, so ahabsadventures.com is the home for everything.
Mhm.
Like from there, you can go down multiple rabbit holes of whether you're interested in having a speak or looking over the last 20 years of adventures. And social media, it's at Ahab's Adventures for everything we're using. But like I said, if you look and you're like, wait a second, they didn't post today, it's on purpose.
Yeah.
We're not, the accounts aren't just closed off or we're not done or anything. We're adamantly working behind the scenes on the next adventure.
Yeah. Well, Geeg, it's been great. It's been great having you on, and I know we'll do it again for sure. There's no doubt in my mind, and we'll see each other again. And now it's my turn to get over to the other side of the country that I've never been to and come see you. I appreciate you taking the time, man.
No thanks is needed. Like I said, the more time you see what happens when you put in time into anyone most of the time, right? You've put in time into Ahab being part of the crew, and I know there's benefits from it, whether you see them physically or not, right? You know that the time you put in is worth every minute, and that's something we can't explain to people. You just have to dive in and see where it goes.
Yep. All right, man. Well, that is all we've got for today, and like I said, you'll be on again, but we will talk soon, I'm sure.
Yeah. Cheers.
All right. Cheers. All right, everyone. I wanted to say thanks for hanging out with me and Geeg. That is an awesome story. He does some really cool things. He's got some decals. He's got merchandise. He actually is a silversmith too, which is a really cool thing. I've got some pieces of silver. The nice thing about the silver is like it's custom made. It's like pirate treasure is what I really like about it. And it's also worth its weight in silver. So it's really worth something that you can tangibly have and use. It's cool. And if you haven't had real silver before, it's really heavy. And once you feel that, it's amazing. I wanted to say thank you to Nikki Pavlovich, our Patreon supporter. If you want to join Patreon, go ahead and go do that. Links are in the show notes. It's at patreon.com/Wes Tankersley. And go check it out. Go join the Patreon for as little as $4 a month. You're going to get a bonus coverage after I get off the show here. I'm going to talk with Geeg a little bit, and I have 3 other ones in there where we just kind of have a little bit of side conversation, and you get to hear kind of the background information. It also helps me to grow the podcast and upgrade and get better equipment and things like that, so you have a better listening and viewing experience. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.